Can you tell what we're recording about, or who rather recording about?
Dynamite.
Was that good? Tough acting, Tinactin.
Oh man, I forgot all about Tough Acting Tinactin.
Oh, dude, you gotta talk about Tough Acting Tinactin if you're talking about the subject of our pod tonight. The first one of the year, the first one of season 3. We're gonna talk about, sadly, John Madden, who passed away. What was it, Christmas Day? No, it was the day after Christmas he passed away.
Yeah. December, a couple days, December 28th.
December 20th. Okay, good. Well,
yeah,
at least he's got a couple days.
Yeah, 85 years old. And we would be remiss on this one that we're not going to do the man justice. And,
no.
And we'll try to make this as fun as we can in our more typical, just you and me podcast. But, boy, you want to talk about a kind of a big blow and a big loss to not just the sports world, but, kind of Madden's like an American icon, So
yeah, no, absolutely.
This is a big loss.
Yeah, you look at it, and yeah, obviously, the football world, he was huge in the football world, but even, gaming, obviously, he affected. And it wasn't just for him, a lot of people were like, oh yeah, it's just like, he threw his name on it to make a couple bucks. No, man, dude was invested. And we'll get into that. We'll get into a lot. Like you said, we're obviously not gonna be able to do the guy justice. And there's been umpteen thousand tributes to him at this point. We just needed to do our own little tribute. Just because he's been such a big part of our lives. And, before we go any further too, I want to address the other loss that we had on New Year's Eve, Miss Betty White.
Oh yeah. And we could run our whole 2022 on her career and life. My goodness. And what a shame that, she was 17, 18 days away from turning 100.
Yeah.
Man, such a tough one. And I believe Danielle and I talked about this. She was the last one from the Mary Tyler Moore show.
Yeah. She was the last one from the Mary Tyler Moore show, and obviously the last Golden Girl standing.
Yep. Yeah. It's absolutely wild. And it's funny too. And you really think about it. My son, who's 7 years old, we popped on the TV and, just goes to a menu. And even he knows who the Golden Girls are because he pointed it out to me. And it's pretty interesting to me to, that she was an icon that transcended many, many generations, and just another huge loss. And, kind of like you lost a grandmother,
Right. She was America's grandmother. She was an American icon, and she was a good person on top of it. I don't think you can meet anybody who's got a bad thing to say about Betty White.
No.
Charity work, everything.
No, I've never heard a soul say anything wrong about her. And, and she was, probably one of the last of a great generation that could kind of bring everyone together.
Yeah.
And so another really tough loss. And yeah, no, we could go and do a whole run on her, but, and we'll certainly, I'm certain she'll come up in conversation at some point when we do an episode, but we really wanted to, hit Madden here. And I'd be remiss if I wasn't saying this, that, I should be recording this. I've been doing some Trillium, which is a brewing company outside of Massachusetts. Kentucky actually allows you to ship beer in, which is pretty awesome. And Trillium is a brewery that actually ships, but they have a beer called Turducken, and I had ordered it on my last go around just before Christmas, and I got a 4-pack of it. And I drank 3 of them. I have 1 left, and I had it in my fridge tonight. And I was like, man, I know I should be doing this podcast while I'm enjoying that beer. but I already promised it to my boss, so so I'm not gonna be a jerk and be like, oh yeah, it fell off my table.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah, so no, I should be enjoying it, but I had three to honor him uh, at some point here in the last couple of weeks, in some form or fashion. But yeah, no, where do we begin with Madden, man? I mean, dude, before we even born, the guy was a Super Bowl champion coach.
Well, before he even was a Super Bowl champion coach, he played well. He was drafted by our Philadelphia Eagles,
Yes, he was. Yes, he was.
our
And
playoff bound Philadelphia Eagles.
and granted, I'll be honest with you. I don't know much about John's playing career at all. I don't have any notes on it. I just don't. I don't. I'm not that familiar with how all that turned out for him. Are you? Do you have any notes on how his playing career was, or anything in that nature?
So he was, dude. So
Sorry.
he was the God. He was drafted like way um like I don't. They don't even have the round anymore.
Mm-hmm.
That he
21st round.
Yeah, it was like, yeah, he was the 21st round. He didn't play. He was on the Eagles during the 1958 preseason. He was the 21st round, 244th pick out of Cal Poly. And that was it. And he played during the preseason. Um, and that was it. And
Yeah,
so,
and that's probably why I had no notes on his playing career, because
right,
professionally there wasn't one.
right.
You're
It was
right.
non-existent.
He blew out his knee, um, and that effectively ended his playing career professionally. However, he gets involved in coaching in 1960, becomes an assistant coach at Allen Hancock College, because that's a household name, um, and then gets promoted to head coach in 1962. And I want to say that in the sense of thinking about how long the man's career was playing wise, professionally, it was nothing.
Right.
Drafted in 1958 was nothing. He 4 years later becomes a head coach of a college. I, that's pretty remarkable, considering you know um, this and I love this quote here. This is how he became involved with coaching. This is a quote from John Madden himself. I got hurt my rookie year with the Philadelphia Eagles. He had a knee injury and he couldn't play. While he was rehabbing, Norm Van Brocklin, we should know that name, would be watching films and would explain what was happening. I ended up with a degree in teaching, and my love for football meshed with teaching. Man, love for football meshes with teaching. What does that become? Oof.
Right. And what's funny is if we talk, obviously his playing career was, non-existent. His coaching career as a head coach in the NFL was 9 years long.
Yep. That's the insane thing to me, because what year did he retire? Do you know, as a head coach offhand?
He retired in 1978.
So here's the thing. Between the time he was a head coach in college, the first head coaching position, till the time he retired as a professional coach in the NFL, 16 years. 16. I'm going to say that because I am on my 15th year right now of where I've been working.
And
16 years as a head coach in college to the NFL.
are you going to
And,
retire?
well, I don't have my own line of video games. But that's insane to think about, really. I mean, before we were born, before we and we would be remiss if we didn't talk about John Madden winning Super Bowl 11. And I just want to throw a note down here, which I thought this was really interesting. Tom Flores, who was the coach of the Raiders when they beat the Eagles in Super Bowl 15, I won't talk about that. But he was the successor to John Madden when Madden retired in Oakland. Um, the interesting was Flores was an assistant under Madden when Madden won Super Bowl 11. There's a little bit of history there. So, like you said, Madden gets drafted by the Eagles, and you have a guy who was a direct assistant under Madden who goes on to beat the Eagles
Right.
in the Super Bowl. So I just thought that was an interesting note.
Yeah.
So I have to ask you this because I thought about this. What's your earliest like John Madden memory?
You know, there's so many, and one that's been, I remember him on Monday Night Football, obviously. I remember him calling games. The one that will always stick out to me, and I feel like it's almost cheating because there's been so many people mentioning it lately, but there was a game where the Eagles were playing the Cowboys, and the Eagles, the Cowboys went for it on 4th and 1. And I can't remember, I still don't remember why they ended up, they ran the play was blown dead, but the Eagles stopped them the first time. Then they lined right back up and did it again, and the Eagles stopped them again. And John Madden said after the second stop, they deserve to lose. And so that's one that will always stick in my head. And I love it because I hate the Dallas Cowboys. And so him saying that the Cowboys deserve to lose was one of my favorite things that he ever said.
That's that was him.
Yeah.
And I got to thinking about my earliest one with him, and again, mine. I think that's what I love about like really, you and I have done so many of these now where you just kind of reminisce and you really think about you know, times in your life that were fun and really memorable. And man, I can remember like the first time I really sat down and watched an NFL game. And dude, I could not tell you if it was the Eagles. I don't know. I just remember sitting down and watching football because I thought that was like hard hitting, fun, cool. And I remember hearing the voices of John Madden and Pat Summerall. And we'll talk about those two names together throughout the course of this. But and kind of, say what you want about it, but those guys to me, because that was my first introduction to hearing and remembering names of the commentators. Because we were lucky, because with baseball, we had Harry Callis and Richie Ashburn and you had some of these other guys, growing up in Philly. I'm not going to talk about local people too much, but on the national stage, like these were like the first announcers and commentators that I could remember. And John Madden just had that personality to me that came across. He was lovable, he was boisterous, and he wasn't there like on the TV, like he was there on your couch. And
Right.
you and I are big wrestling fans. Like those guys to me were like Gorilla Monsoon and Bobby Heenan. That's just what they were for me, for football wise. I was never as big of a football fan as I ever was wrestling. I can't lie about that. But that's what it was to me at the time, So, and really thinking about it, kind of the same thing, it's those what they were to me.
Right.
To me, they'll be my favorite announcers, hands down.
Yeah. I mean, and before, I guess what's funny and what we kind of skipped over a little bit was before. I think that game, the Eagles and Cowboys, was in '95, if I remember correctly. Um, and so I guess more Madden, like the things that I remember, like I know I heard him and I knew the voice and I knew who he was and everything. But I guess the most exposure that I would have had to him before that would have been the games, like the more memorable stuff,
Well,
because I was playing those games um, before that 95 game.
So what was the first Madden game you remember picking up?
I remember playing, it was before they even had the license. So I want to say it was like 92. It was like 91 or 92 for the Genesis. Whatever the first one was for the Genesis, which I honestly I could not tell you. I'm going to look it up now though, because I can't remember, but I remember it was before there was any licenses. And it was just, I remember playing it on my cousin's Genesis and just being like, oh my goodness, this is so much. 93. All right. Or no, was it 93? No, 92, 92. So I want to say it was 92, but I remember playing a lot of 93 as well. Oh no, there we go. All right, here we go. John Madden Football 1990. So
90. Wow. Okay.
yeah.
I thought about that too, and I was like, I know certainly 93, and I'll talk about it, but 93 was the first one I recall that that I played. But I had a hard time thinking about anything prior to that. So 90, wow, really? And that was Genesis, like, was that a Genesis game in 90?
Yeah, that was a Genesis game. In 90, it came out for the
Wow.
Genesis and for the Super Nintendo.
Wow. Wow. No kidding. Wow. So that was like a really early release then.
Yeah. And I remember, I want to say 90, one of the very first years that it was on the Genesis and the Super Nintendo, I feel like there either was an NES version or there was a planned one that got scrapped, because I remember seeing it in EGM. For those who don't know, that's Electronic Gaming Monthly.
Yeah, now that I look at this, and looking at the things, you know, yeah, it looks familiar, like the cover art, the 90 version.
Yeah.
But looking at and I think I'm kind of with you. You had mentioned 92. Did you see the cover art for the 92 championship edition?
92 champions. No, not off the top of my head.
If you look at that really resonates with me. And I just wonder, because I got to think about that. I was like, I know I remember 93 sticks with me as the first version of the Madden game I remember playing, but I was like, certainly I played something before that. The 92 championship edition really kind of the cover art anyway. And that's how I remember things sometimes. It's more visually, but
Yeah, that picture does stick out to me, but I
yeah,
don't
yeah.
I don't remember ever seeing that.
Yeah, I don't know. It's weird. I don't know. Maybe it was like in an ad or something that just. But I don't know. That's kind of the fun thing about doing this. You just kind of.
Yeah. Well, that's okay. So that's why. So my cousin had 93, and I remember borrowing it from him. And 93 has a very similar cover.
Right, right.
So that's why it looks familiar to me. So, and he had the first round version of it, which had a little gold seal and a stamp on it. Um, so I remember that edition. But
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah.
I think
I
the
forgot
first
about
one that I
those.
ever owned it was either 95 or 96. Do you remember the first one you had?
I'm going to say 97. Yeah, it's got to be a 97. I remember playing 93 as the first one I actually remember playing. Very easily could have been before that. I have to make note though that I played a ton of Mutant League football, which was based on the same engine as Madden 93, and I own that. So does that count? But no, as far as Madden titles, I'm gonna say 97. But the hard part for me in that time frame was that I was still such a big Tecmo fan, even
Gotcha.
all the way through, that I had, Tecmo, and then I had Tecmo, was it Tecmo 3 for the Super Nintendo? I think it went all the way to that, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think it went to 3, and then 3 was like the final.
Yeah, final edition.
Yeah.
Yeah, final edition. It came out in 95, I believe. 94. Dude, I played that more to that point, and I think it was probably for a couple of years, and so I'm thinking Madden was like a 97 for me.
Okay. Yeah, I had I think I want to say, let's see. So I'm thinking it was 96 was the first year that I owned it. I had obviously played other versions, and I feel like I might have even had 90, maybe I had 94 or 95 for the Game Gear, but I had 95 for the Game Gear and I had 96 for the Genesis.
Okay, nice, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, do you have any recollection as to and you and I have done this back and forth with certain games where obviously if we played them now, it'd be like, ugh. But any fond memories of those?
I remember playing 96 sitting in a back bedroom of a house we were renting in Ocean City, um, and playing it there. And I remember those games were super hard to pass in. And so I was doing a franchise. I don't remember if it was, I don't think it was a franchise back then. I think it was just a season. And doing a season and trading for Barry Sanders so that I could have a decent running attack. Um, and winning that way. Um, but that's with those games. And I'll even like I'll admit to I bought the Hall of Fame edition a few years ago for I want to say PlayStation 3, and it came with an up like it was the old engine, like the 90 94 95 96 engine, but it
Mhm.
was with updated rosters and stuff. And I tried to play it and I was god awful. So I didn't really my my first like where I was actually decent at the game wasn't until 97 for the computer.
Okay, okay. Yeah, and dude, I can't. I'll be honest with you, I can't remember system for 97 that I would have had. That's the sad part. Definitely wasn't PC. There was a time where I got like heavy console. Um, so and that was right about then. But yeah, no, and I want to we need to talk about this part of it. You mentioned this and we talked about this prior to recording. You know, everyone was like, "Oh yeah, Madden throws." Look, let's not talk about Madden for a second. Let's talk about anyone else and how they hawk products through advertisement, which is been going on for years. And it's like, oh, we're going to throw our name on it and we're going to make a dollar. That's not the case with John Madden in these games.
No.
Uh, th- this is the part that I love, and with him on this. Look, the guy retired as a broadcaster in 2009. You know what he did after that? He still provided his creative input into the Madden NFL game series. He was not say the only, but he was a very high level creative mind behind, those games, doing not just the commentary, but just, look, the guy's not programming, but the guy's a football genius. So, yeah, like he literally had like input into the games for a long time. And I don't think that gets talked about enough. Like
No,
it just
and
it's
that's
just not his name.
right. And that's the thing. And I knew most of this before watching the All Madden special because I've read articles, I've read, I've the his involvement in that series has intrigued me for a long time. Because at first, I thought, oh yeah, he's just putting his name on it, doing the recording, whatever. But the more I looked into it and the more I read, no, that was like a passion project for him. And yeah, he didn't play it, but he was so into teaching the game, and he loved, which he actually taught a class. He taught classes at college on football and how to watch it. Like, this was seriously getting people to understand football and try to get people to understand football the way he did was a passion of his, and it stayed with him throughout his entire life. This game, when they were first trying to figure out how to do it, Trip Hawkins or whoever, I think it was Trip Hawkins at the time, was trying to figure out how to program it. And they were talking to them. They're like, well, we can get the speed up with the processors we have and everything. We can get the speed up to where it needs to be if we take out the guards and we just play with center, tackle, and ends. And Madden said, whoa, no, 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 no. We're trying to teach people football here. You can't teach people football if not all the players are on the field. And so it was definitely something that he was very passionate about. He had a lot of input on, and he wanted to make sure that it was done the right way. And so I'm almost, obviously I want to see the series continue, and I think that it should stay with his name on it to, in memoriam, and to basically to celebrate everything he's done for the sport of football and everything. But I almost think that they should take his name off of it because I don't want to see them ruin his creation.
Yeah, no, it's a good conversation to have. Um, I think legacy wise, that part of me thinks it should be on there forever, as long as they keep making the games, because those are his games. But I also agree. I agree with that too. It's like I don't want to see it, dumbed down or whittled down. And like you said, he viewed the game as a teaching tool. That's what it was for him. He wanted it to be something where you could teach the game. And I love this. Like he wanted it to where you could test plays. And it's such a gosh, like if you think about the timing, like when this like with the first Madden game was like 88-ish, but apparently these conversations were had like well before that, like 84.
Yeah.
You really think about that, like, my gosh, like you don't really talk about people as visionaries that often. Oof. Really think about where we're at as a society now. And John Madden's having conversations about using a video game as a teaching tool in 1984. Oh, my
Right.
goodness. Holy crap. Dude, I was two. It's just wild to me. And I think that's the part that, like I said, people forget with him. Like that's just not, something that's, ever, and I'm not saying everyone. I know, obviously fans like you and me and others are gonna be very mindful of his contributions, but maybe the general populace isn't. And he's certainly just not a commercial name or tag on something.
Right. I mean, now I'm not going to sit here and say, oh yeah, he tested tough actin, tenactin, and he was the one that came up with the formulation for tenactin and all. I don't know how he was with everything else. I know he did some Miller Lite ads. I couldn't tell you whether or not the dude drank Miller Lite. What I can tell you is, in this particular instance, this was a product that he deeply cared about, and he wanted, you know, yes, did it make him money? I'm sure it made him money. But he didn't, he made money doing everything else. It's not like he
Right.
needed this to just as a cash grab. This was more to teach people football. And, the fact that it made him money was an afterthought because that's what the dude loved to do. He just,
Exactly.
and think about it like, so, you and I, able bodied kids, I played football for years. Um, and we played other sports too, but there were some times when, there wasn't enough people around to play football, or, we like, I know there was a point where I had hurt my back and I couldn't play football. And what kept me involved and invested when it wasn't football season and I couldn't sit down and watch football, I couldn't sit down and watch the Eagles, I couldn't sit down and watch any of it, playing Madden or playing Tecmo Bowl too, but playing Madden though, like as I got older, playing Madden. When I got to the point where I couldn't play football anymore and it wasn't football season, what did I do? Played Madden. Now what do I do? Well, I play 2K5, but that's besides the point. There is no 2K5 if there's no Madden.
Right.
You know, every football game that has come out since Madden came out has been in some way, shape, or form derivative of Madden. Who came up
Oh
with the
yeah.
quarterback view? You know, I think maybe John Elway football had it before, but have you ever played John Elway football?
Here's the funny thing. This is where you're gonna laugh. Not only did I play it, I owned it.
Yeah.
I had
Is
it
it
for
a
the
full,
NES,
is it a
and
full behind the quarterback view?
yeah, it was not the traditional, like, it was not the Tecmo Bowl view. It
Okay.
was the yeah, you were behind the quarterback. You were um I had it for the NES. And here's the crazy thing. And like I said, we talked about I just talked about this a few minutes ago. That's one of those games I have more fond memories of than the game probably was, because that's the first console football game that I remember devoting a lot of time to. Um, but at the same point, John Elway football is nowhere near any iteration ever. And you and I, look, there have been plenty of versions of Madden where I will not give the time of day. I'm not gonna lie. Um, and particularly more recently, I just, they, dude, they look like you're playing it. I'm not gonna lie. Like, they look real life.
Right.
They're so realistic. And I know there's just such a tremendous following. But there's not. It's just not for me. Right now, how it is. Um, but look, it's still Madden, and it's still awesome, and it's still amazing. The John Elway game, yeah, no.
Because that was one that I had always seen. I was aware of it growing up for NES. I remember seeing it in the arcade at the Deptford, or the not Deptford, the Woodbury Heights bowling alley right there on 45, right before you get into Woodbury. I remember seeing it there for years and years and years. Never touched it because it looked like crap to me. Because I,
Yeah,
you know,
there's a couple different versions of it. There was an arcade game. The one I had was John Elway's quarterback. It was an NES game, but I think the arcade version was John Elway's team quarterback, or maybe it was a different version of it. Um, the John Elway's quarterback, yeah, it was an over the top like look at it. Um, it just, look, it wasn't a great game. I certainly not, I don't have any fond memories of it now. Then I
right,
did, because that was my precursor to Tecmo.
right.
And Madden, honestly. Look, as much of a Tecmo fan as I am, obviously, the one thing that it lacked was graphics, comparative to Madden. Like, Madden blew it out of the water even then. So, um, you know, look, it's yeah. Sorry, John.
Yeah, no, I mean, and that's the thing. Like, if you got to ask me what my first, you know, the first games that I really enjoyed playing football, it was before Madden. It was before Madden because it was Tecmo Super Bowl, Tecmo Bowl, and NES Play Action Football,
Hmm.
and NES Play Action Football, which I, God, I almost wish Nintendo would maybe make another football game if they could get the license, but that's neither here nor there. They'd probably screw it up. But those were like the first football games I remember playing, and then with the Genesis and getting Madden, it was like night and day. I'm like, holy crap, this is incredible. And then even because let's not skip over, let's not paint with rose colored glasses here. You know, the first Genesis football game I had was Mike Ditka Power Football. We've said that a million times now. I think Mike Ditka might owe us some money, or Accolade. Accolade was the company that put it out, so Accolade probably owes us some money for plugging them. But that was not a good game. Not good. And I remember playing it because it was what I had, and the Eagles were in it. But no, man, like that game was garbage, and compared to Madden, it was even more garbage. And
Right.
so, like, it's just Madden just did things for football beyond just the video game market. The name brand, people, when it became like Madden Day or Madden Holiday, whatever people called it. Do you remember when that started coming about? Like, it's a cultural phenomenon. And
Yeah, you're right. It really is. I mean, it's that release day, right? Is that what you're referring to?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, no, and it's crazy. Like, and there's other things too. Look, it's not just the video games. The one thing, and I know I wanted you to kind of talk about this too. The one thing that I really loved every year for several years there, they would have these like TV specials that were what, an hour long, that were the All Madden team.
Yeah,
And I gotta say this quote by him because I just think this is awesome. It's
it
really
is
made me
great.
smile. Yeah. So, John Madden himself said, what does it mean to be all Madden? He said it's a whole range of things. For defensive linemen and linebackers, it's about Jack Youngblood playing with a busted leg, Lawrence Taylor wreaking havoc on the offense, and Reggie White making the other guy wish he put a little more in the collection plate at church. It's about a guy who's got a dirty uniform, mud on his face, and grass in the ear hole of his helmet. I just love that. It's so good. I love the Reggie White thing in there, but
No, yeah. Well, you got
ah,
it. You got it. I mean, and you look at players, you know, that's I think that was one of the things that I appreciated the most about him was when you look at the guys that he like the all Madden guys. Philly has had teams of all Madden guys. You know what I mean? Like not officially, but you look at the way that our defenses were in the late 80s and the early 90s, and the way that Brian Dawkins played, the way that Jeremiah Trotter played, these guys, Eric Allen, well, Eric Allen wasn't as much, but Andre Waters, you know, these are players that they are just hard hitting, hard working. They might not have the most talent on the field, but they've got the most heart.
right,
And
right.
that's what Madden was all about. And that, I've heard to that point, I've heard people saying, oh, well, they should make the all pro team the all Madden team, or they should make this or that all Madden. And as much as I appreciate the sentiment, I can't agree with it because it's watering it down. If you want to call the Pro Bowl, even if you want to call the Pro Bowl the Madden Bowl, like part of me is okay with it, but at the same time, no, because it's not played with the intensity that John Madden exudes, Like I feel like it's almost a disservice to him to do that.
Yeah, no, you're no, exactly. No, you're not wrong. Um, and I think that's what I remember about the all Madden stuff being so cool was because you had those hard nosed those players that we all loved. Not the players that were like maybe the best statistically.
Right.
Yeah, sure they had some sacks or yeah, they rushed for 1,000 yards or whatever, but they earned every single one of those yards. It wasn't like they were, and I'm again, I look, we're gonna cross a lot of different paths here with players that would obviously meet both criteria. Let's say it's all Madden or Pro Bowl or whatever. Um, but these all Madden guys were just like, yeah, like these are the guys that like I aspire to be,
Right.
basically, and man, I love that every year. And you had texted me before we started recording about seeing the latest All Madden special, and I had not. So do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So I mean, it was, and it's gonna sound weird saying this, but it was a beautiful retrospective of his life and of his career and of everything about him. Like they went from, and what I love about it, before I get too much further into it, I love that he lived to see it. Because what was really cool, what they did is they brought in people from all over the league. They brought in players, coaches, people he had had interactions with. And what they did is they sat him down they sat the people down and had them just talk about Coach Madden, what he had done for them, what he meant to them, how he touched their lives. And then what they did is over the summer, they had him sit down and watch all these recordings that people made for him. And they just kind of filmed him and his reactions and stuff. They talked to his family. They talked to the dude that drove the Madden Cruiser, the same driver the entire time that John Madden had the Madden Cruiser. And John Madden kept him employed the entire time and
Yeah,
took him everywhere he went. And he said, to a lot of people, this would just be a job, but I love Mr. Madden. He always took care of me. He was always kind to me. And I genuinely cared about him and his family and making sure that I got them where they needed to go safely. You know, and it says something because the way that he could have just been a jerk and he could have been like, what, let's just get a rotating person in here or whatever. He could have, there were so many different ways he could have handled it, and he handled it in the best way possible. And it just speaks volumes about him as a person.
oh
And I'm
yeah,
so
oh
glad that he got to do that and then sit down. He had his family over on Christmas and they all sat around and watched. And then 2 days later, after Christmas, so the 27th, was he and his wife's 62nd wedding anniversary. And then he died on the 28th.
yeah, yeah, and that's what it's amazing to even think about that. I think just as a human being, you want to even live that long, and he had 62 years of wedded bliss, which is amazing. Um, and one of the things too, which is super interesting about him, I always loved, and that we, one of the things we talked about, um, as kind of, I remember talking about this as in my youth anyway. Was man, I loved his bus, and
Yeah.
his bus, had the cool ass name of the Madden Cruiser, and it's like, man, that's such a cool thing. And as you get older, you realize like, hey, man, that's just a cool converted Greyhound bus, basically.
Right.
Um, but there's a reason why he had that, and the man did not like to fly
No.
airplane at all. In fact, as best I know, from the years until he perished, from before we were born, he did not fly at all.
Right.
um, yeah, which is absolutely wild. Um, he um, just had an aversion to flying.
Well, he was
Um,
claustrophobic too.
yeah, yep. And it's funny. I picture him, when he would get on a plane like Mr. T. We gotta drug him up.
Yeah.
But no, and that was the cool thing. Like, so I think that part, like, it kind of partially leads into his. I think over the top is wrong. Bigger than life persona. Um, it's like the man was, it was his own band. He was his own, like he was his own traveling band, basically.
Yeah.
He was John Madden. He was like the Rolling Stones touring the country on a bus. He was, that's what it seems like to me. If you really think about it, so cool. And it made him more than football to me.
Yeah. And you know what's funny? So did you know that his wife, as even though he hated flying, his wife loved it and took flying lessons?
It's funny, hey, opposites attract.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that's pretty, you know. And I was wrong about their 62nd wedding anniversary. That was my apologies. It was the 26th was his
Mm,
was his anniversary. But yeah, it's man, the special, when you get a chance, I definitely recommend you watch it. It's streaming, I think, on Hulu. I know I watched it on Hulu. I don't remember what else it's streaming on. I want to say Paramount Plus or something like, or ESPN Plus, or something. Um, but man, it's just amazing his life and just how many people he touched. And if so, let's look a little bit beyond football too. Okay, so um, we talked a lot about Madden, the game, and how much it affected football. Like people can learn football and clock management and stuff from playing Madden. And a lot of kids, that's how I'm getting Peyton to kind of understand the game a little bit. Is look, dude, let's play some Madden. Let's see this, let's see that. And I'm doing the same with NHL. But without Madden and without the quality control that you know, that he put into it himself, I don't think the game industry as a whole would be where it's at now.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a great point. And I think that it really goes back into his passion as a teacher and a coach. Because and here's the thing that's really interesting to me about him. Um, and I'm not saying that he knew that he was God's gift to anything. I say this in a sense of humility for him, that he had the foresight and the wherewithal to say, you know what, I want to put my input into something that will help others see things like how I see them, whether that's putting his input into football video games, or like you had mentioned about him teaching classes about how to watch football. Like, he just wanted to improve people. That was it.
Right.
Um, Granted, yeah, was it related to football? Of course it was. That's what he knew. But, if you have that much passion about something, and then at the end of the day, you're not a jerk about it and you want to share your passion, that's exactly what he did in every way he could have possibly imagined, and was very, you know, we're going to look back on him. And, look, we could have said this 10, 15, 20 years ago, but really thinking about it now, it's like, my goodness, he really was a visionary.
Yeah. Yeah. He not only was he a visionary, but he was a good person. And it's rare when you get the two in one. And to have him be there and be people's entry point into the sport and honestly into video games too for some, because some people they've well let's try this cool video game that everybody's playing, and then they branch out into other video games. There's just so many different aspects of what he created and what he did that reached people, that touched people, that helped people. And it's just, it's amazing that he accomplished as much as he did, especially in such a small, a small coaching career, when he legitimately said, and it's still amazing to me to this day, that when he retired as coach of the Raiders, he said, I am retiring as a football coach. I am not resigning from the Raiders. I am retiring as a football coach. I will never coach again. And he didn't. Because we've seen, Dick Vermeil, who lost that Super Bowl to his, well, not his Raiders, but the Raiders team that he built, that
Hmm.
Tom Flores put together. That was Dick Vermeil's team. And then Dick Vermeil retired, I think 2-3 years later, and was out of football for a few years, and then came back and ended up coaching the Chiefs. And then he coached the Rams, or maybe it was the Rams and then the Chiefs. I don't remember what order,
Yeah, he
but
yeah, the
you
point
know,
being, like, he came back. He didn't retire.
everybody comes back.
Yep.
Everybody comes back. John Madden didn't, and I think that says a lot about him too.
Yeah, it really does. It says a lot about his character, and that's not to knock the Ric Flairs of the world.
The Terry
But
Funks who retires 62 times.
exactly. But no, that just says a lot about, um he basically had his goalposts, and he stuck to them. He knew exactly where he was going to be at that given time in his life. And look, like I had said earlier, like one of my favorite memories early on was, just hearing him and Pat Summerall call the game. And, before we recorded here, uh, you had posted on Twitter, you've got a really cool item. What is that?
So I've got the first PC version of Madden that I ever had, which was 97. Um, when I was in high school, I worked in our athletic director's office during study halls, and his son actually was working for the Denver Broncos, I believe it was at the time, and John Madden was working an Eagles Broncos game, and he flew out and met John Madden and Pat Summerall, and he said, "Hey, listen, I'm going to go meet Madden. Do you have anything you want signed?" I was like, "Yes, please." And I gave him the little like slip for the cover of Madden 97. He took it out there, got it signed by John Madden, got it signed by Pat Summerall, and I've still got it to this day. He gave me two. He got me a pin. He had little like lapel pins of the Madden Cruiser, and I've got to try and find it. I know I have it around here somewhere, but that is really cool too. That I just something that I hold on to and I cherish because it was really cool to have, and now he's gone, and so it's really cool. I'm glad that I was able to get that. It's awesome that Mr. Lurch was able to take care of me with that too. So
Yeah, no, that is sweet, man. And yeah, no, if you can check it out on our Twitter at Noise Brigade Pod. That's such a great item to have, and a great memory too.
I just
No,
wish that
he's
wasn't so banged up.
yeah, it's dude, it's 25 years old.
Yeah.
It is what it is, but that's so cool to have, and um, very, very, very neat. And but yeah, and that's the thing. Like, look, we've spent some time here. Um, you know, I have not a bad thing to say about John Madden. Maybe some of his football games, but that's
Yeah.
more of a personal preference.
Listen, Madden '06 for the Xbox 360 was a launch game. It did not have challenges. I don't think Coach Madden knew that it didn't have challenges when it came out, because I think if he did know that, he'd have been pissed.
Yeah. So yeah, I knock some of the more recent games, and I said that earlier in the podcast. And like I said, it's more of a personal preference. Look, I'm very simplistic in my ways. Um, Seriously, not going to entertain. It's the kind of the same reasons why I don't play Call of Duty. Um, just nope, not no, little too real for me. I can't do it. So,
Yeah, I
but
mean, I still have I've got Madden '06 for the original Xbox. Um, I do have I have a sealed, I think it's still sealed copy of Madden 17, because the Eagles won the Super Bowl that in 17, which I guess I should get 18 because that would have been the roster that year. But um, you know, I haven't really, I can't tell you the last time I played a Madden game. But now this is making me want to go grab a copy. And I mean, I guess I'll wait till next season because it'll be a good one. I'd have to imagine that they'll do some kind of special legacy edition.
yeah,
Wouldn't you think?
and I'm with you on that. I haven't not played a game in a long time, and now that I finally have a current gen console, um, you know, that yeah, I think it would just be cool just to pop in there and be like, man, this is where we're at now.
Yeah.
It just and knowing that, look, video games are, to me, it's like mathematics. They're just built upon itself, um, especially sports games. Uh, the previous versions are always derivatives of the current version, right? So, it just adds upon itself, with new graphics, or new content, new plays, whatever it is. Um, Look, what you see now in a Madden game for say 2022, 2020, whatever, 2021. Um, yeah, he might not have had all of the creative input in it, but he had years worth of creative input leading into what you have now. And I think that's so awesome. And that's part of the legacy is like what we see now. And if they continue the Madden series out, that's years worth of his input.
Right.
you know, a receiver running some kind of, like uh, I don't know, some kind of slant route, for example. And because Madden knew, when a particular receiver would run a route and how a corner would approach him, and these types of things. Those are things that he would know, not the rest of us.
Right.
And that's the shit that got programmed into the game. You know, look, I made that up, but it's probably not that far from the truth.
No, no, no. It's absolutely true. I mean, you look at it, he's the one that wrote that playbook. That playbook is his. So you're looking at, when he's throwing a a 23Y slant and the X receiver is running, a slant, and 7 steps into the route is when they look at the quarterback for the ball. That's because Madden said, hey, this is what this receiver is going to do. This receiver is going to run a button hook. This receiver is going to run a post pattern. This receiver or the tight end is going to run a flag. And that's how we're going to get these. That's how we're going to attack the defense. And then that's going to make the high safety drop in the zone. That's going to, and everything that plays off of it, all of the logic is Madden.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Out here,
You have a perfect visual representation into his playbook in his mind, basically.
right. The only thing we don't get is him drawing the little yellow squiggly lines all over the place.
Yes.
I'll be honest,
yes.
man. I miss that stuff.
I do too. I do too. And because the funny thing was, like, the telestrator, he did that again. Think about like how early he did that. That stuff was way advanced. I'm not saying it was his idea.
Right.
But still, he was the one using it. I
Right.
think. Hell, someone else could have been drawing it for all we know.
Oh, no, that was definitely
I know.
had to
But
have been bad.
but it's so cool to like really think about that. It's like, my goodness, like, you know, um, to this day, like, I know now, like, even what I do professionally, it's like we're just now getting to the point where it's like, yeah, we can annotate videos. Um, Dude, he was doing that stuff decades ago
Right.
and showing the world how he was doing it. It's cool, and it's interesting. Look, the man was ahead of his time. He lived a bigger than this world type life. Again, as we started this podcast, kind of like a Betty White, where I, I don't know anyone that really ever had anything that awful to say about him.
No.
Um, uh, I look, I dog some of his games. That's not him though. I always loved John Madden, and I always will. He's going to be up there for me in football. As far as if I recall back and hey, 10, 20 years down the road, I talk to my kids about, hey, if they're really interested about the game, we're going to talk about certain things. What's the first thing we're going to do? We're going to sit down and most likely either play a game of John Madden football, or we're going to have a conversation about where we're at because of John Madden.
Right. And that's the thing too. When you think of football, I'd say, people of our generation, 9 times out of 10, you say football, John Madden's going to pop into their head in some way, shape, or form.
Exactly.
And it's he's one of those people, one of those names that you say the name and you automatically know what they're associated with. There's very few people like that, but Madden's name is synonymous with football. And anybody who has ever enjoyed any kind of football at any level, or any kind of, watching it, playing it at this point in time, you'd have to imagine that our lives have in some way, shape, or form been touched by John Madden. And I think that we're all better for it.
It's a good way to put it. And I think that's a great way to close this out.
I agree. So if you're up there, coach, thank you for everything. You'll be missed. And until next time, we are the Noise Brigade.